Hello, everybody. We're starting in a moment. I'm just going to wait 1 minute to give people time to sign in. Hopefully, you get the sound sorted, make yourself comfortable. Thank you very much for coming to our event. And I wanted to introduce. Now, this event we've been talking about this actually, and this is the second event we've done in digital therapeutics. I think the first one we did was about compliance and use cases and navigating regulatory and reimbursement pathways. This time we want to look at the whole ecosystem and why it matters. And I've developed the topics with our speakers. And now um, I'm not going to run into a lot of preamble. I want to bring our first speaker, who's somebody who's very, very familiar with the digital therapeutics ecosystem. His name is Andy Molnar, and he is the CEO of the Digital Therapeutics Alliance. And if we could bring Andy on screen. Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. I know a lot of people in the audience are from Europe, and I
Uh,
know a lot of people from the continent may not have heard of the Digital Therapeutics Alliance that I've spoken to. So I'm wondering if you could introduce your organization as well.
yeah, absolutely. First of all, Jose, thank you so much for having me on. Really excited to be here and have this conversation with the other great speakers. So I'm Andy Molnar. I'm the CEO of Digital Therapeutics Alliance. We are the international trade association representing all software as a medical device that delivers a therapeutic outcome. So easy, right? Um, Not much to work on. Everything's smooth sailing. No, I'm just kidding. Um, so I got into digital therapeutics at Pear Therapeutics in 2018, and I say that because I've learned from I've been within some of the companies that have not made it. But the first thing I asked when I got there was, how do you e-prescribe an app? And nobody had those answers because we were still running around like crazy people trying to figure out how these products were going to come to market. And then I went to Cognoa to work on a diagnostic in autism, and I still continued government affairs work, policy work, really thinking about how the entire market needs to evolve and the healthcare industry needs to evolve to include software as a medical device and therefore digital therapeutics. And I just found that my passion lied within bring the whole industry forward, not just one product. So when I had this opportunity to come to the Digital Therapeutics Alliance, I really jumped on it. So enough about me. The alliance itself is the more important part, not my history. So we bring what we try and do is bring every stakeholder together to move this industry forward. Um, it can't be done alone. It's something that in 2018 when I started, it was kind of us manufacturers at the time talking to each other and saying how great these products were going to be. But we didn't have advocacy associations. We didn't have policy wonks. They call themselves that. That's not a negative term towards them. We didn't have enough insurance companies. In Europe, we didn't have enough of the ministries of health and things like that. And so we really opened up our doors when I came on board and did our best to bring everybody together, really, so we can answer the hardest questions. And the point is to get these products in the hands of patients, but a lot of things need to happen before that can occur. So we have done everything from building community, focusing on legislation in the United States and policy, working on reimbursement, and working on commercialization tactics around the globe.
You talked about. I want to ask you something about before I get. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you, but you said that the hardest questions. Okay, I wonder if you could set the table for us, give us a state of the digital therapeutics ecosystem, and I wonder if you could touch on what are the hardest questions in digital therapeutics right now. I know
Yeah.
the reason why I'm asking you this is I've had people before the event saying, Jose, I've heard some bad news about the digital therapeutics industry. Is it what's going on? And there's some people are alarmed.
Yeah, yeah. I would. So I'll go. I think I'll go over that a little bit. And within that, I think some of the hardest questions will come out because I'd like to, and of course I drink the Kool-Aid. I love this industry, but the reality is this industry is here to stay. The question is, in what form, right? And so when we look at some of the most difficult things, like what does good clinical evidence look like? What does good real world evidence look like? What does patient adoption and engagement look like? You can see that in the ways that this industry has evolved. So I think I've had like a pretty unique experience over the last couple of years. Particularly, I've gotten to sit with regulators around the globe. A lot of people don't have that opportunity. I mean, in December of last year, I sat down and talked to the Korean FDA, for example, right? All I was trying to do was listen because we are in a place now, there is still a ton of momentum in digital therapeutics, but it looks completely different than it did a year ago. And I think that's where people get tripped up and see the negative, see everything through a negative lens. But when you actually look at what's been happening, it's incredibly positive. A lot of the hype in 2018 was based on this idea. It was not based in reality, right? And now we actually have seen, because we have pressed so hard, because those early companies have tried so many different things, we're seeing what's working. And it kind of comes down to the Gartner hype cycle. For those of you that aren't familiar with that, you should look at it because it really happens in all technology. And it's happening right now in artificial intelligence, right? A lot of the venture capital money, and when I talk to VC, it's somewhat about fear of missing out, or FOMO, more than it is about necessarily looking at diligence of these companies. Now, when I look at that, it's that next buzzword. If it delivers a therapeutic outcome and it's artificial intelligence, that is a digital therapeutic. Okay. What issues do we have that we're currently facing in the digital therapeutics landscape? Like in the United States, coverage, coding, and reimbursement from the government. Around the globe, coverage, coding, and reimbursement from the government, where we see positive movement in things like Germany and with the DIGA program, where we look at the BICAN program that just started in France, and we look at the coverage of insomnia products for the first time in South Korea. We see Japan bringing products to market. We see chronic care management style products coming to market. We see things that are direct to consumer. We see things that are covered by your employer. We look at all of these, all of this positive momentum in the hype cycle. We're in the trough, and we're just coming out to this slope of enlightenment. So when we had no reimbursement at all, people thought this was the greatest industry in the world. Now we have reimbursement, we have products on the market, we have products in the hands of patients, and now people are saying it's a negative time for the industry. To me, it's crazy. But you do see companies that have raised 80, $100 million going out of business. Well, that's okay. I mean, that is just like biologics 20 years ago. How many companies have gone out of business trying to change the way that drugs could be delivered? It's the exact same thing. And so that's why I actually see all of this change as incredibly positive, especially when we're in a world where business channels actually exist, where 6-7 years ago they really weren't there, but everybody thought it was such a cool concept.
Thanks, Andy. We're going to send Andy away.
Okay.
Don't leave us, Andy. We're bringing you back for the roundtable. Thank you so much for being our opening act. Thank you very much. And we've actually got a lot of speakers today. So we're going to kind of like go through a little bit, maybe a little bit faster than we normally do. And I'm going to bring on Abby. who is from my hometown of Toronto. Neither of us are in Toronto anymore. Hello, Abby.
Hi,
Welcome.
so nice
Thank
to
you.
see you. Thank you again for having me. I'm really excited. This is going to be a great chat, I think.
Yay. Now, why don't you could start by telling us a little bit about you, including what is a neuroengineer?
That's a valid question, and I get that a lot, actually. So I work in neurotech. So what this is any different types of technology that are reading and measuring brain signals of any kind. So it's quite a widespread field, but it also has a lot of intersection with digital therapeutics. So although not all of neurotech is part of digital therapeutics, there's a large section of it that does have a nice Venn diagram correlation and overlap. But what does this actually mean I do? Basically, trying to build different systems, either invasively or non-invasively, which are able to take these complicated signals, decode them, and then make them into something meaningful. So at our company, if I can just jump ahead a little
Yeah,
bit,
go ahead.
we're building augmented headphones. So imagine if you could wear your normal headset that you would be wearing, just in-ear headphones plugged into your ear, and they were able to give you biometrics the same way that your smartwatch or your smart ring might. This is what we think is probably going to be the future of all these smart wearables is everything that you would wear all the time is going to become smart. So our approach is if you're wearing something on your head and it could take direct brain measurements, that's very, very rare, and we should take advantage of that opportunity. For actually what this means for you is very accurate sleep measurements, very accurate measurements on your productivity levels. So how hard are you focusing and are you actually focusing? Or are you thinking about something else and mind wandering? Or how well are you meditating? So there's a whole slew of different things that we can already capture, and this will only grow, particularly in the medical space, in the next 10 or 15 years. Um,
You
yeah.
guys have the biggest wow factor. I think if I was when I talk to people who are not in health tech, this is a thing I do. I try to absorb information from people such as yourself and then repeat it to other people who aren't in the field to see what they think of it. You guys got the most enthusiastic response. Not a
I
big
I
blind
think
talk.
that at least a bit of that is due to Elon Musk. He's really pulling his weight for us collectively in terms of marketing for neurotech. Whether you think that he's the leader, whether you believe in his politics or whatever, he's really made neurotech a known thing globally, which it absolutely has not been in the past.
So now, would you describe it when you talk about neurotech? I always thought it was called inner ear EEG. Are they intersecting or are they separate or is that not the right term?
So in-ear EEG is just our specific solution. It's a
Okay.
technical word for augmented headphones.
Okay.
I'm just figuring if people don't know neurotech, then they might not know that. But if people are curious to figure out or coming from a clinical background, that's what we do. So the EEG is a full scalp medical grade system where you can take different voltage measurements and use that to interpret what's going on inside the body in terms of signal voltage and signal communication. And we have really cut back a lot of the many channels. And now we have a single channel going from A to B, where we get an average measurement of what's going on in your brain. And that's our trade-off for being able to get it into a mass market acceptable form factor.
Oh, there's a lot of people have Bluetooth devices already in their ears. So how is inner
Abby, can I
ear?
ask? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a quick question because I'm a QEEG nerd. I just 20, 30 years ago I used to do QEEGs. What waves can you guys pick up through the ears? Is alpha, beta, like all of them, or is just certain loci, or like we're
Yeah, I mean, I can also send over some resources afterwards, but we pick up basically frequency ranges from 1 to 35 fairly well. We have done experiments as well up to 90 hertz. However, it starts to get sketchier.
pretty wide?
All right.
Human ears just picking it up.
Um, how is so? What can we expect? in the near future from inner EGD in digital therapeutics? I know you.
Um, Yeah, so I think that a lot of digital therapeutics is about taking previously complicated technology that has been limited into a clinic setting and trying to roll it out in a more mass market appropriate form factor. And I think that companies like what we're doing and what a lot of the other companies in the space are doing as well, is trying to democratize this complicated technology such that it can be used on a large scale. And something like the Apple Watch has actually already done this really well, where they take a measurement that wasn't previously really thought about that much or respected, and they create and collect so much data on it that it actually becomes incredibly useful, especially when combined with AI. And I'm hoping that we're going to be the next generation of that, is really allowing people to do normal, interesting brain recordings while wearing their earphones that they would wear every day. And they can use that for their own health metrics, or they can use that for doctor metrics, or they can use it for productivity or for really anything in the long run, is the idea.
Oh, really interesting. I just got my girlfriend a Garmin jogging watch, so we're doing this. We're starting that journey. Um, I want to ask you a tough question. I know Andy set the table for us. I'm wondering if you, I know there's a lot of, I want to bring up the bad news again. Have you been facing, and I done any kind of headwinds or difficulties because of the climate in digital health and digital therapeutics right now? I don't know if it is affecting you, and if so, how are you dealing with that?
I think being in an industry with a lot of growth is always going to be a little bit complicated. So we already touched a little bit on companies that get $100 million invested and fail, or companies that are really hitting a regulation wall or an innovation wall. And this is going to happen in any high growth or heavy innovation space. And for us, we're in deep tech, so that is bound to happen at some point, at least to a lot of people in the field, if not specifically us, where there's some sort of wall or obstacles or bumps that are hit. But for me, I'm coming both from the engineering perspective, but also now the product perspective. And I really just try and focus on the end user. And for me, that's my gold star. And if I'm focusing and thinking about the end user, we're probably not going to make the wrong call. And that's not just offering someone a little nice to have cherry on top. That's what actual problem am I solving in someone's life? And how can I solve that problem better and in more detail and for more people? And by just always searching for and finding that problem and trying to solve it with the thing that we've built, it's difficult to track down product market fit when you're looking for a problem with a solution in hand, and it requires pivoting and new features and new creativity. But I think that's always going to be the right way to go. And I think even if you're hit with troubled economic times, you maybe need to scale back, you need to get leaner, you need to get smarter. As long as you're thinking about the end user, all of those things will be going in the right direction. And eventually, if you've succeeded in solving someone's problem, those are the companies that will succeed and that will get the next round and that will meet their revenue targets. And I think that that's all you can kind of do as a small company, is do your best, focus on the end user, and invest in the things that you think matter.
Better to, from what I keep on hearing, it's better to have a problem looking for a solution. Sorry, have a problem that you're looking to solve than have a solution in search of a problem. Thank you so much.
My
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Don't leave. We're taking you off screen, but we're bringing you back. And by the way, to everybody in the audience, if you have questions, don't wait for the Q&A to start. Put them in the chat, and we're gonna get to them. If I can't get, we don't answer. If we can't answer all the questions, I'll get back to you after the event. Now we can bring our next speaker. Hello, Arash. Can you hear me?
I can. Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. And it was very. I think I spoke to you. It was a Monday, and it was very late in the game. So I really appreciate you coming on such short notice. And because I always like to have a clinician on the panel. I always find it's a good idea. So I was like, oh, we don't have a clinician. And thank you so much. And I know I wonder if you could introduce yourself. And when you're introducing yourself, can you just tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a clinician working in the digital therapeutic space?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm a clinician. I'm a pediatrician based in London, and also a clinical academic based currently in Imperial College. My research has changed over the years, but right now is very much focused on digital health, and it's specifically focused on how do we evaluate and certify these new generation of technologies that are coming through. And what we're seeing in this space, really, when it comes to not just digital therapeutics, but digital health more generally, is we're starting to mirror both how people want to use technology in all different aspects of their lives, but also actually how healthcare transformation has been pushing for long before digital became such a big part of it. And in both those cases, it's about having an interface or an ecosystem whereby you can do as much as possible within that one environment. So traditionally, medical devices were based around the idea that you would certify things around quite a specific intended use. So you would certify your asthma app, your diabetes app, your surgical app. We know how to do that as an industry. We know how to do that from a regulatory perspective. That's not a great experience for patients. It's not a great experience for providers. People have more than one condition, and certainly providers and systems cater to many, many different therapeutic areas. So what we're now starting to see as a paradigm shift is, rather than a series of point solutions that we try either keep separate or integrate, well, let's try and build a single platform that will do and host everything possible. And the work that I do, my industry role at Humor for the last 4 years, has been around building that, regulating that, certifying that, evidencing that. How do you certify a medical device that is condition agnostic? And we were delighted to be the first organization to successfully certify a condition agnostic remote monitoring device to a class 2B level in Europe and a class 2 level with the FDA, as well as other regulatory bodies. I guess what I really love about the digital health space is it combines two very slightly often contradictory approaches and philosophies, but which I think have to be combined if we're going to be successful. There's the kind of instinct you have on the innovation space, which is to do things quickly. It's okay if you fail, iterate, improve, but speed is the name of the game. And then on the flip side, when it comes to the research and clinical governance space, it's very much about being safe, conservative, robust, assured. And that's why many of these approvals take a long time. Digital health is a really interesting space because you have to try and combine those two approaches. Many of the traditional research methodologies that we've used to verify pharmaceutical technologies don't apply and cannot apply to digital tools. Because actually, if you think about it, a molecule, a drug shouldn't change, from version when it was released to 20 years later. But by definition, with these digital tools, not only do I want them to change, not only should they change, but I actually want them to change. And often I'm, might be issuing 20, if not 50 improved versions over the course of a year. So how do I create a research methodology that reflects that change as well, but also introduces that same degree of robustness? So for me, it's been a really interesting space because I found actually those two hats have very much influenced both sets of practices. My role as a clinician very much is to provide a patient perspective and a subject matter perspective when it comes to the digital health design of the products and the solutions, making sure the technology actually solves the problem it's trying to solve. But interestingly, I've also found that working in this space has changed a little bit in how, one, I approach research, but also my clinical practice. A big part of what we do is to think, right, now we have this technology, rather than just digitize care as it is, what if we could rethink the way that care is delivered? How would we do things differently? There's a few different kind of themes that come out, but one of them is very much the idea of having a much more, at least semi-formal decision-making structure when it comes to getting data and deciding kind of what to do with that data. And what I've found is that has made me a lot more focused on answering the question, why am I doing this investigation? Why am I doing this clinical examination? Why am I approaching this clinical patient in this particular way, rather than what often sometimes happens in clinical practice, which is you gather a whole bunch of data, you kind of try to build a picture from it rather than go down a more sort of algorithmic route. So I think it's a really exciting space. And I think actually what we're now starting to see is we had the hype with COVID. A lot of this stuff was done out of necessity. We've had a bit of a bubble recently in the digital health space, but I think what has now been the benefit of it is that we are getting a much clearer picture of not just trying to digitize everything for the sake of digitizing everything, but where really is the real promise? Where's going to be the real value in digitizing stuff? And that's both in specific cohorts of our patient population. It's also in like specific therapeutic areas. We're seeing some are proving much more amenable to digital pathways and digital therapeutics than others. But also in terms of what is the goal that I'm trying to solve here. And a mistake that we kind of tried to make in the first exodus after COVID was let's try and digitize everything, and that's never going to be the right thing. I see very much digital health should be an option on the menu, but it is just an option. And for some people, it works fantastically. In some places, it's not going to be the right fit. And that's very much how we've approached digitization in all other aspects of society. So I'm really excited by this space. I think it's a really great opportunity here. And I think what I'm particularly keen to see is that finally now, with the expectation of doing these things in a rigorous way, so generating the right kind of evidence to the right degree of rigor and starting to actually certify these products and solutions is happening. And the reason why I think that's great is it stops us from doing what many people feared was going to have to be an inevitable aspect of digital health, which is doing it all off license, essentially not having the same degree of confidence and rigor that you would have with a traditional therapeutic. And I think that's an absolute necessity when it comes to introducing things like digital therapeutics, because it's a really great opportunity that we have to start to be able to influence and drive and improve clinical management. That comes with a huge degree of responsibility, and we have to follow the same degree of robustness and process that we would do in any other therapeutic. So a very exciting space, and one that I think is going to be significantly changing in the next 4 to 5 years as we start to fully understand what is and isn't a really promising area of innovation.
Can I back you up a minute? You said something about balancing the addition and the involvement, iterations of new features, and clinical testing. I know, for instance, I went to the Atlassian conference. I think they released like 2 or 3 new features a day on a healthcare platform. But how do you balance this kind of clinical evaluation when you're constantly releasing new features?
I say it's definitely not an overnight process, and I think a lot of people ask us how we've been able to do what we do. So I probably can't give the game away, but what I can definitely talk about is like just take a step back and think philosophically about what it is you're trying to achieve. So I think there's kind of 3 principles in the first instance. The way I kind of see how we are certifying these new types of technologies is we're starting to certify and assure them in much the same way as we have always certified and assured clinical professionals. And traditionally, the way that we certify medical devices was you would run a test, you'd run an investigation, you would see the performance level, and then that would be there and that, and then you would do your post-market surveillance at some period in time. But the regulations that define that for software are largely drawn from hardware, where you're not expecting to change and operate. And some of the challenges that we've had in software originally, and certainly these new types of software where you're trying to iterate really frequently, is that paradigm doesn't necessarily follow. So to take a step back, the way that we and other companies do think about this is, first of all, think about looking at clinical governance, solid, robust clinical governance. Like, there are always going to have to be guardrails with what you can and cannot reasonably do within the changes and things that you iterate. Secondly, it comes down to actually what's the degree of assurance and evidence you have for any of these new features. In some cases, you can pretty much assume that the thing is going to be fine. So for example, if I introduce, if I change the font slightly, or if I introduce kind of a new arrow here, that's probably not make a difference. But if I'm going to all of a sudden start to introduce this new trafficking system, then yes, that's going to require a degree of evidence. But there's also something about understanding how can we quickly synthesize evidence that's already out there in that domain. So like, to give one particular example, we were looking at potentially introducing a new feature which was related to how would we change the kind of goal setting or the warning signs that we would give to patients. And there's a number of different concerns that would come with that. Is it that you can create additional anxiety? Is it that you could potentially create overload on clinical systems? Is it that you could potentially create a bit of confusion, a bit of disengagement? And actually, it turns out there is quite a lot of really, if you know how to search for it, really rich literature on how alerts, alarms, all these sorts of things work in clinical practice. And if you can synthesize the evidence, you can actually find out there's some really key themes. And amongst those key things, for example, is there is a very different scenario to giving someone information or alert and alarm in the situation where they can do something about it. Say, for example, your blood sugar is a bit low, you need to do this, or your blood sugar is a bit high, you need to take some insulin, versus a scenario where there's nothing really that they can do. And that's the sort of like testing and information gathering that we do. And then in addition to that, yes, it's about the study gathering. So before we got all our certifications, we had something like 12 or 15 different studies in a range of different therapeutic areas that we had run with a range of different methodologies. And we spent a long time, 3 or 4 years, synthesizing all that evidence together. But to answer your question, to kind of how it's done, absolutely it can be done. I don't know if 3 features a week at that sort of level is something that's possible, but we certainly do try to release at least one or two kind of versions a month, and we tend to prefer to batch them up because it allows us to actually look at these things in a holistic level. And ultimately, the goal that we're trying to achieve isn't because of one feature; it's because of the suite of steady improvements that we're trying to bring into the product.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Arash. You mind? We're going to send you away. Would you mind waiting in the wings? We'll bring you back to the roundtable. Thank you for that. And the next speaker, Purva. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Jose.
Welcome. And I've had a couple of meetings with you. You always put a smile on my face. It's lovely talking to you. Thank you for coming today. And I wonder if you could, I know who you are. I'm wondering if you, and I know you do your own events on LinkedIn events, but I'm wondering if you, so some of the people in the audience already know you. But I wonder if you can introduce yourself anyways and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Purva Darkar, as you know, and I own a consulting advisory company, Ziva. But my story backs to the days when my interest started for doing research for basic sciences. So I tackled some of the issues of early basic research, understanding the structure of proteins through crystallography. And so that's from early on, I've always been looking at research from a very data-centric perspective. And having worked at NIH, the National Institutes of Health, to look at some of the problems in proteins in neuroscience and Alzheimer's. And in cancer, I got very excited to look at the business side of things and moved on to get involved in some of the preclinical programs, informatics-driven programs, and preclinical research like the genetic and rare disease program, which is called as GUARD, a big initiative at the National Institutes of Health. I've worked on some of the apps through FDA called as Cure ID, where clinical data was made accessible to the public. And through these initiatives and being very data focused, it segued into my current role. So at Ziva Consulting, we help startups and we work very closely with startups in digital health, health tech and medtech to help them bridge the gap for market research as these companies put out their products and helping them understand the right markets, helping them in their business and case studies and value propositions so that they can approach the funding problem in a better way and an easier way. So that's kind of my introduction, Jose.
I feel like we kind of like are two sides of the same coin because I help startups in the same space with their software engineering challenges, and I mean I do webinars as well. And so I think you and I are often we're engaging with startups and helping them grow, kind of at the same stage, but from completely different angles.
Yeah.
And so in my case, it'd be like a startup's got funding and they've got funding in erratically or in tranches, and they need to kind of ramp up their software engineering. You're helping them go to market. From now, how do you use market research to help companies in the health technology space, and specifically digital therapeutics, go to market? And I wonder, and I keep on harping on about the negatives, how does the current situation in digital therapeutics, is it change that picture? Is there new considerations if you're going to market with a digital therapeutics solution as a startup in 2024 that you didn't have to worry about maybe 1 or 2 years ago?
Oh, no, that's such an amazing question, but it's so hard to answer because that landscape is absolutely changing at a very fast rate. There are different issues in different geographies and different tiers in developing countries and developed countries. So if we start to address it with developed countries, Europe and US especially, there is this big issue of regulating the data and regulating the technology and still making it accessible to the patients and the people to bridge that unmet gap. And here big companies like Pfizer, the big pharma, the Pfizer, the Sanofi, and Novartis, they're addressing because they have created big verticals where digital health products are specifically funded. It becomes easier because they already have a setup, but at the same time, when we start looking at the startup landscape, it's pretty uneven, and the funding has kind of declined from the past 2 years. In 2021 to 2023, we see like a 70% drop in funding, which is not a good news. But at the same time, the innovation does not stop because there is this unmet need, and with the AI, we see new technologies. We see specifically funding. I see there is a big change that has happened is women's and men's health is looked upon in a very different way. So the gender parity and the gender equity has surfaced there. We see there's big issue, and in a way it is good because it is also very good news for men's health, because right now they were like boxed. Men and women were their health issue was solved in one problem, but which is actually not the case. They are two different and they should be addressed in a different way. So the US government has taken on a big initiative of the Biden administration has funded a $200 billion funding has been allocated for women's health, which is a great news. And NIH has created a separate funding mechanism through ARPA-H. And this big funding is going to address all the innovative technologies through startups and focusing on menopause, period healthcare, conceiving issues, as well as women's health, which is outside of these, even heart, cardiovascular care, and women in cancer. At the same time, funding for men's health is also increasing, like Cronus Health. They have put out an app where men's bladder issues can be addressed by using specific exercises. So having these digital technologies where you can go in and specifically look at those gaps and that have been kind of like siloed, like men's health has been siloed because of the same thing, is pretty unique. But at the same time, it's very challenging because now we need to separate out and look at it a different lens and fund it in a different way. So we at Ziva are trying to address it by looking at very separately, not boxing it, and having that innovative lens to look through where is the market going, how can we channelize the funding and make it easier for these startups to take their cool technology and get it funded. So we also work with global health companies where after the pandemic, the global health market kind of boomed because of companies like WellDoc, which started, of course, to do better, but newer platforms emerged, platform technologies and app technologies to fund, to be able to provide more accessibility to areas, Caribbean and the Southeast Asia and Africa. They are the telehealth platforms have kind of boomed. And we are trying to help bridge the gap to find global health funding. And we've had some really good wins in that regard. But I mean, coming back to the problem, Jose, I think I would really look at these technologies separately and geographies. And I think it's getting better and worse at the same time. I would say, like, with the news coming in constantly, but I think we are still in a good place because people are well aware of what is to be addressed. And at the same time, governments are doing a really good job to keep up with the regulations.
Okay. Thank you so much, Raziva. And you know, we're going to have to do a FemTech webinar in the future at some stage, but I'm going to set you off to the side.
Thank you.
We're going to bring you back for the Q&A. And actually, we're a little bit late. So, I've not been doing a good job of keeping time during this event. We got 50. But if you've got any questions, put them in the chat. Last but not least, Alex Lee, and actually, this webinar was his idea. I had a meeting with him, I think it was 1 or 2 months ago, and we conceived this webinar, that Zoom meeting. Thank you very much for coming today, Alex.
Hi, Jose. Yeah, it was fantastic. Actually, we discussed about this idea, several months ago, and then it finally realized. So
I get there eventually. You have a very interesting background. You're a physicist,
and
a patent attorney.
Yeah.
I found it's a very interesting combination. So I wonder if you could kind of introduce yourself. I know you run your own events, and a lot of people here know you. But I wonder if you can introduce yourself and what you do very quickly.
Okay, yeah. I'm Alex Lee. I'm CEO of the Tech IPM. We are the consulting and incubating company for particularly in high tech and digital technology. And currently we are focused in digital healthcare, especially digital therapeutics. And I'm happy to talk about this topic to the fascinating audience today. I organized several DTX before, but this is the first one actually that we can talk about the whole ecosystem of the DTX. And then you assigned me to summarize what
if you
previous
can
speakers
respond,
talk about.
This is why you have the hardest job.
assignment. Actually, I look at the Andy's talk about. That's fascinating because I think that one of the motivation of that I delve into this fascinating area is because I met Andy last year, yeah, quite a long time ago. And then at the time, actually, that I motivated by someone in Korean TTX startup CEO met with me. And then at the time, there was a big initiate in South Korea, actually, that they want to promote and develop innovative startup in digital therapeutics. And then so they organized a lot of meeting in the Boston area. And then at the time, actually, the Andy was a speaker, and I think that it was a good time to meet him because I think that he is a key person, right? The most essential person in digital therapeutics. So I met him and I discussed about my idea. At the time, actually, that I have not many idea about what the DTX industry looks like, but as Andy talk about the DTX industry is a fascinating a combination of the startups and then big companies, and especially for experience in pharma and digital and biotechnology and medical device area, they combine integrate. So it's kind of it's a convergence business area that I found. And then Andy discussed about what effort actually the Andy did as a Digital Therapeutic Alliance. And then I agree with him that he's very positive now, but still very early stage. That's I agree with him. And then mostly he talked about the reimbursement actually because of the different policy in depending on the countries ecosystem, because a big ecosystem, global ecosystem have under the local ecosystem because of the different regulation policy and culture. And especially for the Germany, he mentioned about is Germany, South Korea, they are pro TTX. So the government tried to have to provide the bonus code or something like that. But the problem, maybe the characteristic of the United States because of the different policy and health system, because United States is completely private. So insurance, hospital are completely private, competing over the profit. In South Korea, Germany, a little bit more public. So different aspect. But I share with him that is still promising, but we need a lot of things to overcome. And then Avi, actually, I'm very familiar with what she talked about because I was the same field as her, because I was in tech side mostly. And then he talked about the big, a company like Apple and other a big giant company can have a good opportunity to in digital therapeutics area. And then she envisioned about utilizing smartphone or the everyday device can be different level understanding of ourselves, and then can be as utilize DTX as everyday the task or whatever. That I the same vision as her, so I was thankful for her. And she has actually he talked about a lot of the clearance and evidence of how to prove it. That actually the area actually I have difficulty. The reason actually it tied with Prabhas talk about the startups for example startup incubation, go to market strategy, and then get the fund. Because for example my motivation is that I have a talk with someone from South Korea TTX entrepreneur, and then my job was to incubating this a company to for example innovation, patent strategy, and then go-to-market commercialization and fundraising that I'm incubating the companies and consulting. And then he talked about her story. What she doing was actually developing the digital therapeutic application utilizing AI and Excel, a virtual technology, to cure have a software to treatment of the Alzheimer's disease. And I found, Alzheimer's you can treat using the software. I'm fascinated. And then he talked about, because doing is actually he developing the like mobile brain scanning, like they call like a near infrared scanner, and then making it in like in like a wearable, and then they can like provide some stimuli using like a virtual reality matter, and then they measure it, and then looking at the curement, and then the like adjust their curement, and the AI analyze the status, something like that. I was fascinating. So I asked, okay, I want to join with you. And then I will have to fundraising. I talked with a lot of the like fundraising like investors in the Boston area. I surprised that they said no. The reason is that there is no any evidence you can prove. It's fast. There was I found it's a different, right? Because if they kind of like he already done like a research letter, some paper, and some pilot. I think that is enough, right? But it wasn't enough, right? Because in digital therapeutics require evidence, right? And then ask about whether it's a clinical trial and real life evidence like that. So I at the time actually that I realized it's different, and then I'm starting to delve into what this digital therapy industry, and I wanna looking at the goal in the deeper level, so that actually that I can consult the startup in this area. That's what I've done. So can you share I recently I posted it in my LinkedIn about 8 months of the like my analysis of this industry. Actually, what I done was that I look at the whole industry, and then analyze the individual startup, and then accumulate about more than 170 startups, and then I'm looking at their business model, product, and their like reimbursement, like a clinical trial, and even patent. And then fortunately for me, and I think this is a really early stage, so not many companies actually there, because for like me in the high tech emerging company area, actually usually even the starting, for example, when I was already like involvement in the Bluetooth technology when it showed up in the more than 30 years ago. Actually, even in South Korea, I read some organization like Andy doing Jesus Alliance. We have 500 startup members at the time, right? Here, I'm looking at this industry. I only find about less than 200 stakeholders in startup, and then some pharmaceutical, some means like on less than like 20, something I found the collaboration with, and then some medical company and some clinic, right? And then I found around 200 patents actually directly related to digital therapeutics. So I think that is super niche still, but compared to that, I understand that this promising this industry, because I think about it, because it's fascinating. I talk about, because in the future your smartphone know about you what will happen. Recently I'm talking about like a lot of like for example large language model like ChatGPT can predict what will happen in your future health, and then know about through your everyday interaction with what just sending text to whatever you exercise, and then they know about what will happen in the future, and then it notice you, and then notice you're like a healthcare provider, whatever, your insurance company, whatever, they have a proactively work for you, right? And then they will treat the best like a treatment you can have, including digital therapeutics, right? I found that fascinating area. That's my motivation. I really focus on this area more than 8 months, only this area. And then I found that still hugely promising, right? But we need some strategy, right? Because of the by eyes of the like someone not in this industry, but has experienced another industry for 30 years. For I will look at all the life cycle of the startups that's going and down, and then unicorn or whatever, right? And I also like work in the big company. I was in South Korea, was in the government officer. So I know about how the ecosystem was built, and then they grow. The ecosystem is dynamic. It's like an organism, right? It's grow and then it changing, right? So it just still just see the stage. I think the digital therapy. So I found the Andy's law is very important, because he's one of the key person to be cultivating this environment,
The
right?
gardener. By the way,
Yeah.
anybody, if you want to see Alex's slides,
Mhm.
I think there's actually, if we were actually to flash them on screen, they'd be a bit too small.
Yeah, but
to
I
read.
think that
They're
if
in
you
the
find out
comments.
me in the LinkedIn, I post it. But actually, it's a beautiful graph of the whole ecosystem of the like a startups and their like a product and what the status reimbursement, whatever like a clearance, FDA clearance or the other like a Giga in Germany or some kind of like a fundraising status, and then like a pattern analysis, right? So you can see that. But and then I will share the full report maybe in a few weeks later. But my expectation, because you talk about my expectation in the future, yeah, it's promising.
We've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, and then it'll be still be increasing. But as I told you that like me, fascinated, high expectation, and then idealistically is it's not there, right? It may be a lot of people with the same feeling. I talk about vision because I was always in emerging technology. I talk about vision, what is going on, and then what the promising, something like. But in reality, we need to be take care of the all things like in detail. Like Andy talk about the stakeholders, the matters like stakeholders in healthcare is very complicated. Right, even complicated than other industry because of the completely different the market mechanism, payers and consumers are different, right? And then different goal for each stakeholders, right? And then government also have a different view about the public policy, right? And the different country have a different view, right? So it is very, very difficult to make very like a best strategy for them. But still, in the still early stage, we have a lot of opportunity to do that. I will share my idea, right? Because because you know that I have experienced this one, and then I fortunately my characteristic because I was always on the emerging technology. Whenever the new technology is coming on, I'm interested. I organize a lot of meeting, so I have a lot of huge connection in this field. And over the past 8 months, I have connected more than 1,000 in this field. So, and then recently I've tried to talk with the individual stakeholders, company that in my analysis about the feedback from them, what to think about my idea. And then I think that the one point that is they are try to understand whether this pathway that they go through is correct, right? Because for example, that because all the for example, like a peer therapeutics and better therapeutics, and then and even Aculi, the old pioneers have some problem, right? I'm not going to talk about detail, but all are problem with the revenue generation even after IPO, right? So we need to think about why we cannot make money with this promising area, right? This is the one we need to be further to think about it, whether we can prove, we can have the following startups, following innovators to be, to have some experience with this, some kind of the early failure, and then have a momentum based on that, and then we can grow, right? So that's one actually that we can look at it, and then we need to find out the whether with the correct pathway. One contribution I can do that I found that is that the pathway is too long. Even if it has a, you know, that the first word is a visitor. This term is a lean, fast, right? But if you have a healthcare combined, it's slow down, right? It's
Alex,
pathway, like
can I stop you there? We're out of time.
right. So
We're out of
I
time.
think that I think that my contribution will be utilizing technology to shorten this pathway. I have a lot of idea. Even I have consulting a lot of company. I have own my idea, and I'm looking at the way. Actually, I'm sharing with a lot of people about my way to shorten this pathway. Another way is to make money. Is that make money follow simplicity. That's our experience, right? Once technology is sophisticated, whatever promising, once make money starting, it's hidden and then simplified, and then it disappear from the attention, right? But there are companies that are making money, right? That's our experience in all high tech in the area. So that means that simplification is needed in this field. That's it. I want to share a lot of things, but actually the two things I can think about is to shorten the pathway, to check the pathway is correct, and then best strategy, and then think about like a simplify the process and the product.
Thank you for that. Well, we got around 60 minutes. You know what? We had a couple of questions and comments in the chat, and we're gonna have to take them offline because we're out of time. And I want to thank everyone for being patient. I've never had 5 speakers in a row. I think we normally sometimes we have just 2 or 3. And so we're gonna take the answers and the comments that have been sent to us, and we're gonna answer them we'll get everything addressed offline. One thing I want to leave everybody, if anybody has anything they would like to add or more questions, or if you want to collaborate with me on a future webinar, or if you're building something in health technology and you want to know how to market yourself with online videos, or you want to ramp up your software engineering, you're wondering how to do that on your budget, tap me on the shoulder and I'll give you all the advice that I can. And we are out of time. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and have a great day. I'm having another event. We've got 2 events coming up in June. We've got actually 3 events in June. Leveraging compliance for product market fit. Clinical AI, integrating AI into clinical workflows, and health tech software success. That one's normally for engineering leaders. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and you have a great day.